anywhere in our own systems or our own internal systems, and we'll make sure that we work towards fixing those. But I don't see that there are specific hurdles or impediments. It's just ensuring that we have enough people to be able to deal with the functions that as a rail network we must adhere to.
For sure. Musa, I'll give you first stab at Christopher's question, saying when meeting between your board and Prasa board, exactly the same question was asked, and his concern is that train drivers should be trained on the issue during his off shift. How and when must he or she sleep, as this could be a very important matter, as fatigue is always present when especially the SPADs, I imagine you know what it is, or rear end collisions take place.
Yes, this was a matter raised around interaction between the ARPA board and the Prasa board. That doesn't only affect Prasa as an operator. These human factors standards, and then there's a framework that was introduced as a regulator almost 2 or 3 years ago. And since then, we have been doing a lot of work on educating and creating awareness among operators, so that they understand their responsibilities around human factors. I see there are multiple questions from our colleagues on the line about the human factors area. And you'll even see in issuing our permits, many of our special conditions are around the human factors. So from a regulatory perspective, we traditionally have the 3E: engineering, education and awareness, and enforcement. And more in the more recent years, added a 4th E, which is around economics, which is this human factors area specifically. So our contribution is assisting operators around education and awareness, where they don't quite have the necessary policies in place around train driver issues, around how they sleep, around fatigue management. Our approach will not be too punitive, because we are introducing this area and deepening understanding. So if necessary, we issue special conditions, we monitor throughout the year, and this is some of the work we're doing with our Prasa colleagues as part of our permit assessment processes. So that would be my from the regulator.
Let me bring you in here, Musa, and perhaps deal then to, as Musa referred to Sma's question around the human factors capacity within the operations. She says, given that human factors deficiencies are implicated in railway occurrences and efficient operations, how are you at Transnet addressing this?
All right. First of all, I think given that it's required for legislation, it's something that we take seriously, as Transnet. In us taking it seriously, we have looked at building in-house capacity, first of all, to make sure that we've got internal experts when it comes to human factors. So we are on a drive to appoint, human factor specialists, those people with master's degrees in economics. Okay, we've started a journey on that. I must say that the biggest challenge in the country is to retain them in the organization, as all of us are looking for them, and there aren't many of them out there in the markets. And then we've started programs now to sponsor some of them from school, so they can come out directly to work with the organization. But looking at the requirements in terms of the legislation, it becomes quite important that we size our capability in-house and complement that with the external capacity. Transnet will be going out, public in the next few months to look for those service providers out there to assist in terms of conducting those human factor, risk assessments that are critical for all of us to then manage, human factor related matters adequately. And we now have the capacity to size that and do the gap, and we like to bring the external service providers to help us deal with it. And at the core of the Transnet rail environment, most of the human factor issues stem from theft, vandalism, and sabotage activities. Now, I will make an example. You've got people that are still signal cables, and therefore the signals will be affected and not no money. Then we have, CDC officers that have to work on overdrive, conducting manual conversations. Now, we all understand then the human brain will do so much. So the question is, how far can it go without making mistakes? How much of a load should we expect of an individual, in executing, let's say, So, most of our work is in that space. And I must say that if we were to just address the issue of theft, vandalism in this country, then we'll see, at least some progress in terms of what we are doing. Now, I can go shopping, and as so indicated, even our permit, at some stage, some special conditions. And I think the RSRs are comfortable with the progress that we are making. So it is quite serious, but it continues to be a challenge because the people that are critical in mitigating this risk, they are quite few out there. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Tepo, let me give you Temba's question, who says, comparatively speaking, Gautrain is the less impacted operator as far as crime, theft, vandalism is concerned. Is there willingness to share knowledge and strategies followed with the operators?
Thank you for the question, Africa. We have constantly said, what do they call it, we asked in different platforms, we are willing, and I personally have been engaging with numerous of my PRASA colleagues on different fronts, on the issue of their depot modernization, on the issue of their ticketing and their smart ticketing, and even on what they call it, safety. We're willing to share. We're willing to share in actual fact, the lessons learned from what we had to do right in the beginning, to be able to make sure that what happened on other operators does not happen here. Because there was protocols that were activated immediately when we went into lockdown level 5. And those, and even with those, we had one incident of cable theft, but it was an internal matter. From our investigation, it looks like the security guards that were working on that line were actually involved in the incident itself. And once we kept that and dealt with that, then we had an incident session with the pandemic itself, and we haven't had any cable theft so far. So it's about your business continuity depends and your safety protocols being live. It is about you innovating on the spot and changing your tactics of how you manage certain things all the time. It's about you thinking through. So one of the key things that happen is that a lot of incidents are not thoroughly investigated. And when you don't thoroughly investigate your incidents, therefore you do not understand the root cause, and therefore you cannot follow back and say, how do I change what I have so that I can be able to do better in the future? And it's about that. It's about you rethinking your protocols. Because a lot of what we do is you set up standards, you then, and I always say to a lot of people, what the RSR says to us we should do, that's minimum. That's the least you could do. You actually have to set the bar way above that. And therefore you will find that we haven't had that many fights with the RSR. The different ones that we've had, we've addressed the issues, we've addressed the concerns that everybody has brought. But I want to weigh in on the idea of what they call it on human factors. There is an important consideration that needs to be brought on, and we have an opposite problem. So what you find in our operations is that because the operations work so well, our train drivers are not used to an incident where we are in what we call degraded mode. So maybe we've lost the signals and they have to operate in and around that signal with authorizations and most of our things. And we have to train them in that. And it's a very strange thing. Why would we train somebody for a situation that doesn't work? It is because if we've ever had an incident, it has always been in and around that our train drivers do not understand how to work, or our operators do not understand how to work in degraded mode. And it is a challenge that sits there. So those are some of the things that you have to psychologically consider, that a human being that is used to a very well-functioning system, when the system goes into degraded mode, they do not understand how to deal with that. And you gotta equip them for that ability. On the other end, there's also the bit where, because of the kind of speed that you operate at, you gotta put on technology safeguards. that, you know, the train, if, like our train as it is right now, if the train driver does not react to the messages on his display board in his cabin, the train will ultimately into breaking mode, and it will take over from there. So you have to be able to combine both the human part and the technology part to be able to make your system safe. And we are constantly innovating to make sure. So in addition to all of that, we now download all the recordings every day on every train of how the train was driven around. And you give coaching. It's not so. A lot of people want to deal with this. Somebody was asking about this yesterday when Moses was talking about punitive measures and all of that. It's not about that. It's about you coaching as you go, rather than discipline. It's as you go, as on a daily basis. You could be able to understand what had happened when the driver was there, what has happened with certain behaviors, and also get feedback from our customers. If you had a driver that, you know, took off quite badly from a station or went into a station badly, we also get that information. And some of it comes through social media, and it's scathing at times. So you gotta be able to watch the situation from all fronts, rather than you just simply relying on your traditional means. You know, you just going out there in the cabin with the train driver, because you have to rely on technology to do that.
No, for sure. Zolani, I'll give you Kenny's question. Because one has to admit that the one advantage that the Gautrain has over Metro Rail is the ability to secure the majority of the network that they operate on, right? The infrastructure. If not, for PRASA and for Transnet, completely the opposite. They're very limited security. I imagine for a lot of the tracks, they are absolutely out in the open. So Kenny's asking, how do you involve the ordinary citizens to protect and reduce the occurrence in the incidents we're talking about in the railway environment?
No, I think it's essential. Obviously, Gautrain operates very limited network in the sense from our town to Pretoria to Sandton and a few stations in between. We operate on a much larger scale, plus in 4 provinces, and so our business model is different. Our security requirements are completely different from Gautrain. So it is essential that we find the mechanisms. We have been working to ensure that there is a level of community participation, because you will often find that if the communities are engaged in areas around the stations, they obviously can potentially become your first line of defense. So it is something that we have been looking at in some cases where there are cooperatives that will also assist in maintaining the stations, not only just protecting them, but being able to actually work and clean the stations and keep them sufficiently high enough standard. We've not done enough in that area. It is an area that we're putting a lot of focus on, that aspect of community engagement, having community forums, also to hear from the communities themselves. As we also rebuild the infrastructure, we also try to ensure that some of the spend that we're utilizing in the rehabilitation of the network goes into the community, so that there's active attempt to grow the local community to using electricians, contractors, and so on projects that are on an ongoing basis that we have. But the security side, we ask our security department to ensure that they do engage with the communities and try to make sure that communities are aware of what's going on, that they can report to us. But it also means we have to be visible to the extent that we can be. We are currently in the market for additional external security to be provided with that should be awarded in the next 2 weeks, and to ensure that we have got more than beyond our own 3,000 protective officers, that we have additional resources in that. The communities are going to be an essential component of that plan.
Thank you very much, Solani. Muso, the next question from Tiafo is for you. Public safety is a concern, train jumpings and level crossing accidents, etc. Has the regulator undertaken a study to determine the cost of implementing the fencing regulations? Will PRASA and Transnet afford the cost? I suppose I can ask PRASA and Transnet that question. But have you undertaken a study as far as the cost of implementing fencing regulations?
So, from a regulatory perspective, the direct answer is not yet. We have done some work that gets us closer to the answer, but we haven't done full study. The regulatory instrument at play was the rail reserve regulations, which were gazetted by the minister about a year ago. And as the regulator, we are giving operators a 2-year transitional provision to comply with those regulations. And those regulations create the requirements around fencing the entire network. But as the GCO process just indicated, you are dealing with operators that are different in size and especially even from length and breadth of operation. So the fencing requirement is not an equal burden amongst them. There's almost having more burden around them. What we have done is these regulations require central features of rail reserve regulations, require operators to do a risk assessment. So they themselves do risk assessments, which enable them to understand which areas of the network require the highest level of priority with regards to fencing, and this takes them closer to answering the question around cost that is answered by TFU. As the regulator, as I said, we've done some work around it. We don't yet have cost, but the primary responsibility, as you understand, and the description I've given, lies with operators there, judging from the risk assessment, prioritizing the area, detailing the cost, but it is a manual effort in some of the areas, given the instances where they would have put in place the fencing and now it has been taken out through vandalism and systems. So, in that regard, it is a monumental effort. But a direct answer, we've done some work, we haven't yet considered it fully. The rail reserve regulations have been introduced, the 2-year transitional provision, and we are working with operators to get them to the required standard from rail reserve regulations. Thank you.
All right, let's go to the operators then. Mandisa, where in the process are you as Transnet? Have you worked out a figure yet as to what it would cost for you to fence the entire network of the Transnet infrastructure?
All right. Yes, I think let me start with the proposal I want to put on the table, and then I come back to Transnet. I think it's going to be important that as the industry, we then identify our contribution to the economic redevelopment of our country. Because post-COVID, we've reversed data. And therefore, we need to make sure that as a collective, while we're executing our mandates, we are very clear to say how are we enabling this country to redevelop its economy and grow beyond that. Now, one, I am of the view that good intentions with the fencing legislation. However, I think it's one of those I prefer that we collaborate more, we engage more, ripen the issue more, because one, there's an element of practicality, as operators and network, operators, we've actually tried to construct, walls and fence and do all of that, and we've got lots of data to share the experiences. And the question therefore is, what is then the right mechanism to help us mitigate this risk? All right? Because it may be, the intention is good, but maybe what it's proposing and how it's proposing it may not be sensitive to the economic situation of our country, may not be sensitive to the socio-economics out there, and has not maybe taken into consideration the lessons learned from the past. So from a Transnet point of view, we have interrogated the legislation. We are very clear in terms of the implications. We are worried about the financial implications when we weigh that, when you do your cost-benefit analysis, we have reservations, but I would like to discuss that openly here, rather have a conversation with relevant parties so that we work together towards a solution. But we are very clear about it, and you can see some red flags, and you see the benefits, and we would like to then engage in the interest of improving safety in South Africa. If you allow me, Africa, may I just add to the conversation of security that we had earlier on? I don't know how to raise my hand.
Just before you do that, let me warn Zolani that I will be coming to you, Zolani, to ask exactly the same question as I asked Mandisa, where PRASA is in this process, and obviously to get your input on this. But Mandisa, you can go ahead.
All right, thank you. So on the security front, I think for me, taking advantage of the platform, again, I think Zolani covered the community aspect very well. The part I want to bring on board is where, I think the shareholder as a government has a clear role to play. This is one network that is exposed throughout South Africa, but it is not seen as the national key point. And because it is not seen as the national key point, you don't have, government's, interventions, rolled out in this space. If you go to a port, the harbour, you'll find a police station in the harbour. But the harbour is well contained. You go through the port gate and you are in there. Here we're talking about the network that crisscrosses various communities. And with the socio-economics moving in the wrong direction, joblessness, moving in the wrong direction, people's desperation increasing, then we are becoming an easy target. My view is that to make this significant impact in this economy, we need the government to come forward, to protect its assets as in the railways. In addition to what we are doing as the, Transnet, PRASA, name them. All right. So there is a significant improvement. But within, these entities, I think there's more collaboration that we can deal with. Transnet, as we speak, we are engaging with customers. And they're going to be putting the shoulders on the wheel to roll out the technological solutions that we are rolling out on the security side. However, these security technologies are technologies that should be South African, standards in future. And therefore, it would not help much for one entity to be rolling out when the other entity may be having something quite good. Hence, the interface and all of that needs to be strengthened, and then we can begin to sign more. As like saying, whatever we are doing right now, we understand that PRASA is on board, Gautrain is on board, the RSR of course is on board. So that we know that we are building the new standard, in the railways together with other operators, because we crisscross, we work together. The employees also move across. So that will only, improve the railway situation in South Africa, particularly the railway safety. Thanks.
Mandisa, thank you very much. Zolani, I imagine you resonate a lot with what Mandisa has just said, right?
No, we definitely sing from the same hymn book on that issue. And my colleague, Group CEO, said to me some months ago that PRASA and Transnet are just too big to fail. Their importance to the economy of our country cannot be overestimated. And in fact, I would even go further and say an agreement with them that they're national strategic assets. If you think of the movement of freight across the country, how important that is to the economy, the movement of passengers, you spoke earlier about the impact of the closure or the central line issue. These are issues that are critical for the economy and for the commuters and for the employees of both organizations. There is a collaboration, for example, to look at the security challenges that are faced by Transnet, Eskom, and Telkom, and PRASA, where the groups, the respective CEOs have met, have set up task teams to focus particularly on the problems that they all face, particularly around cable theft, damage to our substations and infrastructure, and how we can have a joint approach to a number of these issues, because all four of those companies are essential, Eskom in particular. We all know how essential that is to the economy. So I think that the long-term economic development and sustainability of our economy is dependent on transportation. You can't get away from it. That's just a fact. The movement of goods and services, as well as just even in simple practical terms, tourists coming to the country. If we can get the Paarl Stellenbosch line functioning in the Western Cape, tourists will be able to go to the wineland and so on. So the other old lines that are not being used on the MLPS side. We talk a lot about Metro Rail. We also forget we've got MLPS that is there as well, that we want to also bring into service on a much more consistent basis than it is now, deal with some of the problems that it faces in specific. So I'm in full agreement, and we do engage on a continuous basis with our colleagues in transit. Of course, we depend a lot on them for some of the lines we're using, some of their lines. They use some of our lines as well to some of their goods, Gauteng in particular, some of them with the motor. So we see a lot of instances where there are joint synergies between the organizations, and we want to make sure that we fix the challenges that they face, which are a lot more similar as well, and particularly on the security side, the fencing that we've spoken about earlier, the walling. These are long-term solutions that we're going to have to implement sooner rather than later to make sure that the sustainability of our transport infrastructure, particularly for rail, is maintained. How train plays an important part as well in moving commuters in and around Johannesburg. We have Park Station, which is sitting right here next door to us. It's a very important nodal area for movement, not only of train services, Metro Rail, MLPS, but also the bus services and the taxi services. So we want to make sure that we address these and that the solutions are comprehensive and sustainable over the long term, and we just don't look at medium-term answers to some of the problems, but that we actually build on those and sustain them, and the solutions can be found locally as well. I think that's very true, but there's some lessons that we can learn from our partners as well and see what makes sense to us, what works in our environment a lot better than some of the solutions that may be localized. So I think that between Transnet and Prasa, we're a family. There's no escaping that. Sometimes we fight, but in terms of our key objectives as organizations and generating revenue for the economy and for our businesses, because at bottom we're businesses, even though we're owned by the state, we're businesses, and we've got to make sure that revenue generation is uppermost in our minds in terms of making sure that it's sustainable revenue over the long term, and that we don't just have these short-term challenges and we have no solutions to them. We're businesses, and we want to make sure that they're sustainable businesses. Government doesn't want to keep seeing us coming back and asking for assistance. We also don't want to be in that position where there's an over-dependence on government for funding. We've got to put our own houses in order so that we can actually have sustainable businesses over the long term. Thank you.
For sure. I'm fast approaching time for a comfort break, and of course I'll be inviting you to please make use of the lounges to go and one network with one another. But I'll ask also the panelists if they can then hop onto some of the tables in order to answer some of the questions that we might not be able to get to. So what I'll do is I'll go to Mr. Caesar's questions, because we haven't posed a question from him yet, and it is directed to you. Can you please tell us how the regulator is using the risk management maturity model as a regulatory instrument in your oversight of how operators are managing safety? If yes, what is the picture that you are seeing?
Oh, thank you for that question. So the R3 is a tool that we have begun to pilot at the operators over the last couple of years. Last year, we've done some studies at the major operators, with the last one at Prasa, and that is meant primarily to understand how their risk management protocols have been understood and consistently applied across the business, across various elements that we test and then So we have a hierarchy. There's implementation, the parameters, then we have what is inspection into that and in a particular region, how companies are understood throughout operations, and we have a consistent application of this safety management. The results have been interesting. They've been different across the three operators. We've shared these results with the operators, and we hope to continue to reassess as we continue to roll out the pilots, move around and collect in each of the operators. So we have how we are rolling out, how this is being supported, and how operators are buying into it as we continue to manage profiles of industry operators. Our flagship project that we are building over the next 5 years is what we call the safety risk model, where we like to profile the industry interventions to be replaced by so the safer operations roll it out at the large operators. We are now going to roll it out, and hopefully we get there. Thank you.
All right. Musa, thank you very much. Unfortunately, because of the weather elements in Gauteng, the line didn't come across as sturdily as possible, but I imagine that Mr. Sisa got the essence of it, which means that I won't give you that final question because of the connectivity, and rather send it to Mandisa to answer Humphrey's question, whether there is a possibility to give more resources to railways to safeguard our railway infrastructure. Mandisa?
Yes, thanks for the question. I think the answer to the question is yes, any resource would add value. However, we want to box in a smart manner rather than the hard way going forward. Bringing more resources as Transnet, we realize that our over-dependence on physical cards when it comes to security is not helping much, because in some instances we picked up that the security personnel themselves, they become part of the people that we end up arresting. And some of them working with syndicates and so on and so forth. So our strategy in the next, 3 years is to migrate, from physical cards to technologies. As I indicated earlier on, I think in Transnet we started using drones on the security space about a year ago. Literally, so, monitoring the network with drones supported by action, teams on the ground. Now that has become a norm. It's not just in some areas, hotspot areas. It's becoming a norm throughout. And then we're also deploying technologies like your distributed acoustics, systems. And what they do, they pick up movement of people around the infrastructure before they even cut a cable, before they even do anything. And because it's it's got the capability of intelligence, Internet of Things, then it can differentiate between the normal movement and then versus the isolated movement. And we are beginning to look at fitting, alarms into, the network. As they tamper with it, it then sends an alarm to the control center. All of that is being done because we realize that this, the physical parts, from time to time, we've seen it a lot since last year, April, till now, that there's very little they can do against people that are coming in big numbers with AK-47s. So we then need to move towards technology. One of the key things that we are focusing on now is to harden the targets, because we know the types of equipment that they are after, and therefore we're making it harder to access those and run certain pilots, in some of the corridors, and we're quite comfortable with the results of those, and now they've become a standard in the technological deployment. Okay.
Sorry,
cool.
I was going to say that because of the connectivity, it is not unfortunately Karen's study. But let me give you the opportunity to conclude then.
Yes, let me just say in a nutshell, resources that we need are more technological in nature. We need money so that we can roll out technological solutions, and then less of the physical parts. And then also, when you look at the industry, and this is a challenge to anyone who practices in the security space, the caliber of a security, officer in South Africa, I think we need to work harder in that. The criminals don't respect our security personnel. And I think we need to up the game, if indeed we want to, achieve this set objective. Thank you.
Mandisa, thank you very much indeed. Mandisa Mondi, the Executive for Safety, Transnet Freight Rail. Tsepo, let me give you your concluding 30 seconds.
So it's unfortunate that Muso is struggling with coming in or out of the connectivity, and I want to weigh in on this thing of offensing, and I want to raise the issues that I had raised with them on the regulations issue the first time. We're regulating the wrong thing. Initially, we needed to be able to come up with us being able to regulate how we create a security strategy. The things that Mandisa have just been raising now, that's what we were supposed to be regulating, because you just simply asking the entire industry to fence the hell out of the place is not going to help much if you do not have a proper security mix. The security mix is cameras, it's movement technology, is the drones, it's the fencing is actually and the personnel, and then also what do we do with railway police? The railway police themselves, we have to repurpose that whole entity to be able to function in a completely better manner than it does today. And it has to have, so there's always the issue of control, because the railway police can come on site. We have them here. And the challenge is, how do you activate them when something happens? So that's what we needed to regulate. And I still say the fencing regulations are misplaced. And I am open about that, and I've said it when they were issued out the first time. They were supposed to have been issued post us setting up a railway security strategy. And then after that, then we can then talk about the elements, because it's an element of the security strategy.
Okay.
And I think that's my.
I'm going to hold it there because we are 3 minutes over time already. Tsepo Gome, thank you very much. The Acting Chief Executive Officer for the Gautrain Management Agency. Zolani, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to conclude.
30 seconds is all I get.
That's all you get.
Well, I think we have to constantly look at some of these issues, and I agree with Tsepo fully. Some of them, before they go out into the market, we do need to have a discussion because they affect us. And often we don't really look at the long-term implications of some of those decisions that as they're taken on particularly critical areas. We are, as the costs of security for us are just beyond anything that you can imagine. So if we don't really adopt a policy that is aligned in the long term, where us as the operators are actually consulted before some of these regulations are promulgated, then we're going to run into serious difficulties down the road, and then you're forced to start making changes when the train, as it were, is already in motion. And I think we want to avoid a situation of that kind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zolani Matthews, Group Chief Executive Officer for Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa. Muso, you will obviously have an opportunity to give you the concluding remarks for the conference much later on this afternoon, but I want to get your initial 30 seconds to respond and close off this part of the session today.
As the major operators, the important stakeholders to us. We will continue discussions with them and take it in our stride to comment it, even so that we work together and collaborate. I thank them for their contributions, and as a regulator, we reinforce the message that we hear them and we will collaborate with them in our efforts. Thank you for including this session.
Musa, thank you very much, Musa Selaledi, of course, the Acting Chief Executive Officer of the Railway Safety Regulator. I do apologize for taking 5 minutes of your networking time, but I think you will appreciate that it was an important discussion. Thank you for all your contributions and your questions. Do go to the various lounges and meet certainly the panel members, but other people as well at the various tables. Remember, exhibitors are having virtual exhibitions that you can enjoy, and if we can be back here on this platform at 5 minutes past 10, please, at 10:05. I'll see you shortly. Thank you, lady. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
SAPEX is the professionalizing supply chain management in Africa since 1966. 53 years of commitment to supply chain excellence in Africa, whilst growing, empowering, and sustaining a vital community of educated supply chain professionals. Supply chains are at the heart of every organization, and supply chain competence is the catalyst for economic growth and transformation. As supply chains become more complex, skilled and ethically accountable management is essential. But where are those professionally designated and ethically accountable supply chain professionals? You are these supply chain professionals. These are our supply chain focused organizations, and SAPEX aims to elevate your role as a supply chain professional within them. Join us on our journey to elevate supply chain management as a profession in Africa. Think supply chain. Think SAPEX.
Welcome to Bikini, South Africa. We are the preferred manufacturer of high-quality sorted railway wheels for locomotives, wagons, and passenger vehicles on the African. Our products include monoblock wheels, tires, axles, and wheel sets to specification. Our facility
Safety in the workplace. Smart Economic Services. Through consulting, training, research, and development, we develop tailored, smart, and high-impact solutions. Our services take a systems approach and are applied across the 3 domains of human interaction: cognitive, physical, and organizational ergonomics. Our consulting services integrate ergonomics into organizations using established methods, approaches, or interventions, including ergonomics risk management, human system interaction assessments, accident investigations, fatigue risk management solutions, training and awareness. For more information or to speak to one of our consultants, please contact us on the details displayed.
So it's a different government that decide to go in this direction. But what is interesting that in reality, there's a strategy on that. There's an European strategy. And the European strategy is the TEN-T network. There's also a European Commission that put a budget to develop this kind of investment. There's also coordination with other countries that are outside from, for example, the European Union, think about Switzerland. And there are not only national rail investment, but there's also a budget at the top level from European level that help to develop this kind of network, this kind of international network. Of course, what we saw that also a single regulation, we are going for a single regulation with the European Union Agency for Railway, that I had the honor to give some speech also for them, that is really coordinating the whole national safety body. And more they have more power to try to have a single regulation also for the safety at the European level. So there's a strong development on that. And I think that is a good example, even if it's very complex with 27 different governments or 28 different governments, it's really, really complex to go in this direction, but it was already done. And the idea is not only think about the rail has to be the backbone for the transportation, and it's the backbone also with other transport modes. Intermodality is really a key of success, but the rail has to be the backbone. So, for example, you can have a port in a country like in Italy, think about Genoa or other city like Trieste, and then you have to have a real European backbone that connects to the, for example, the dry ports in another country. That could be, for example, in France, could be, for example, in Germany and so on. But you have to have a real European backbone. So what is very interesting that this strategy to create a network that connecting the main points for logistics, for example, and also for the passenger, connecting different countries. So the mentality has to be not just for a single country, but has to be really a little bit European in this case. And I think is the best way to create something like that. Very quick on the track access charge. For example, this is the track access charge in Italy. And what we saw that is an important cost. For example, between 13 and 22%, depending also of the level of track access charge, and also depending the total cost of the company. You have the incumbent that have a different structure of cost than the rail private freight operator, and so on. But it's very interesting that to understand that is very important. And also, if we see in the high-speed rail, for example, in Italy, it's around 30% the total cost of access charge. In other countries, it will be also more than 50%. So just to make understandable to you that even if you have a structure that is a vertical, that you have a vertical separation, you have a holding, you have also an integrated, vertically integrated structure, like in Tanzania, for example. What we really saw, that it's possible to introduce a regulation for the use of the infrastructure for third parties. And this kind of access charge, a part of the cost or a part of the tariff has to cover the direct cost linked to the wear and tear of the infrastructure, and the other part is linked to the markup, and that is named markup, that is linked to the ability to pay of different operators. So this is very important. So you have to calculate, sorry that I'm a little bit academic, but you have to calculate the total admissible cost for the infrastructure manager. You have to decide what is the level of state fund to help the development of railway sector. You can have also zero if you don't want to help the railway sector. And then you have to calculate, apart that, you have to calculate the efficient total cost. And the track access charge is divided between direct cost and markup. So you have three ways to help the railway company, the infrastructure manager. In the long term, for example, you can reduce as a state with subsidies directly the total admissible cost is around, you can see here in the point 1. So you can reduce because the state makes some investment on the infrastructure that has not to be repaid totally by the infrastructure manager. The second way is to increase or decrease the state fund that could be given every year. In this case, you can have multi-annual contract with the infrastructure manager, and you can reduce here or you can increase here the intervention of the state. You can have also zero here. And the third one is to help in the short term, to help directly the reduction of access charge, directly helping, for example, the railway undertaking or PSO services and so on, if you want to reduce here. And this is the typical case that we saw in many countries with the reduction of or the elimination of markup part components, especially during the COVID-19 year. The other element that we have to take in consideration that is that to build the infrastructure, many times there's a lot of cost. Here you have an example from China. You know, China made a huge investment in the railway sector, but also there's a problem in terms of how to repay this kind of investment. And one of the solutions that they try to give to many governments is that you can have private investment that can arrive to increase the use of the network, to increase the number of the trains that are on the network that costs a lot. The network costs a lot of investment. In this case, for example, there's a private investment that was around $1 billion before starting. Italo NTV started the 28th of April 2012, and they have a break-even 2015, but they make private investment to buy new trains and so on to use the same network. They pay for using the network, of course, more than around €8 per train kilometers. And in this case, the cost, the investment was more than €1 billion for that. And what is very interesting, that at the beginning in Italy, there was a private bank, there was a big entrepreneur, there was the first insurance group that was the owner. And in 2018, the company was sold to an infrastructure fund that is named Global Infrastructure Partner from US. So right now, the railway company is owned by this structure, especially from GIP, that's from America, from US. And it's very interesting that it was a big development of the company. As you can see, just a private operator, this is just a private operator using the same network of the state-owned enterprise. They have 20 million passengers for long distance, for the high-speed rail. That means that is similar to the aviation. Normally, it's more than 400 kilometers. And the EBITDA margin was higher than 35%. In reality, it was 40% in 2019, the last year. So it's very profitable. It's possible to increase the use of the network to have higher also traffic on the network, and at the same time, finally, you have also a profitable company. The same in the rail freight. More than 50% of the traffic right now in Italy are given by private rail freight or freight company that are not the state-owned company. It's more than 50%, and it's very interesting that it was growing a lot during the last years. And this is really the case that you are better use of the network. The last is about high-speed rail. As I told to you, there was a strong increase of the demand, more than 100%. In reality, if you consider 2019, we have 120% more traffic with the same network, more or less, with the same GDP. So Italy was not growing, but with a lower price for the consumer. So it's very similar to what we saw in the aviation business. With that slide, I really want to thank you for the attention. And it's very a pleasure to be here to try to explain how Europe and how Italy was able to develop the railway sector. And I hope that this kind of economic regulation, safety regulation that we saw also at higher level, for example, at European level, could help also to give some idea for South Africa, that of course South Africa in general for Africa. So thank you very much. Really, thank you very much for the attention. And I'm here for any question, and you will find my contact thanks to RSR.
That was wonderful. I am sure, just like myself, none of you felt like Professor Andrea was not in the room. I can see the messages. I can see the emojis going sharp, 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 sharp. Thank you very much for that presentation. Please do note those questions. We will be sending him those questions, then he can respond at a later stage. I don't know about you, but I believe that from this presentation, you could see that various countries, even within the same continent, they've got different structures on how to manage the safety in the railway space and maintain sustainability. We can see how a coordinating continental body can play a role in making sure that those different structures, national structures, can actually be coordinated in a way that accommodates the inter-country railway systems and lines. Our next speaker is Ms. Makwela. I'm hoping she's live. She's on live. She's online now. Ms. Matselenyane Makwela, presenting enhancing safety standards across the borders. Enhancing safety standards across the borders, Ms. Matselenyane Makwela. Welcome.
Thank you, Nangamso. And thank you to all delegates attending this session. Please give me a minute just to project the presentation.
While we are giving Matselenyane a minute, a reminder to please use the Discuss tab on the platform to obviously pose your questions to any of our speakers. And another reminder to then use the Polls tab on the platform as well to rate the speakers. We will, in just under 2 hours, be handing out the Best Speaker Prize, which will obviously be determined by you. You'll rate them between 1 and 6. And depending on who gets the best advocate score, you will then obviously determine the winner. We're also asking you to please take pictures of yourself engaging with the conference in whatever way you are, and sharing that on social media platforms for us. We'll also be giving out a wonderful prize for your photo booth, as we are calling it. I'll share the hashtag with you a little bit later. Matselenyane, are you ready to go to proceed?
Let me try to share. Please be patient a while.
It's perfect. It was there for a second and it disappeared. What we can do for you is put up the presentation on our side that you forwarded to us, and then you can just prompt the colleague from the regulator to obviously go to the next slide when you're ready to. Would you prefer us to do that?
Yes, please go on.
Okay. If we can put up the presentation, there it is. It's over to you again.
Thank you very much. And as I said, thank you all delegates attending this session. As introduced, please allow me to start by saying, can you please page to the second slide? The next one. Yes. Please allow me to start by saying railway safety standards, regulations, guidelines, policies remain key to enhance the performances of the railways, to enhance safe interoperability, and to ensure sustainable future throughout the SADC region. Why am I saying so? I'm saying so having listened to all the discussions since the beginning of this conference, which we all affirm that they are indeed great. As we are sitting here, there are great opinions from us as the railway members on how we can move our railways forward. Also reflecting on the lesson that we have just learned globally on the management of COVID-19, on how COVID-19 was managed, where we have all seen how clear and effective guidelines and regulations enabled all of us globally to uniformly manage and implement the guidelines within those regulations up to where we are today, where we have adopted to live in this new normal, which began with the use of that regulation. I believe with COVID-19, this was a very great testimony to say to us, with effective management of risks, we can all manage the situations. Now, with that being said, please, the next slide. With that being said, and also as introduced that I am currently serving within the regulator with the harmonization, within which the harmonization of standards is one of our objectives within our mandate. So let us take a quick look into our role as the railways throughout the region and how we contribute to economic development. As you see on this map, we transverse across the region. In other words, now as we are in South Africa, we go across the borders from one country to another, transporting our commodities. It is also said, please page another one. It is also said that the railways as a mode of transport has a great potential to enhance economic growth. This was also said by the previous speaker, we have heard it. By our nature, as shown in the map, we transverse across the region as an integrated system for support and promotion of trade across the borders. What does this mean to us? One entity, one organization of the railways, we still depend on others. We still depend on the others across the borders to ensure that our commodities, our passengers that we transport, they reach their destinations. One of the roles that we play as the railways, we alleviate the traffic congestions from other modes. This was also said by the previous speaker. We minimize all the environmental emissions, particularly also from the transport mode. Another slide. Another slide. This is affirmed, backward. Backward. Please page back, yes. This throughout the region, as I said, within the mandate of the regulator, we have the responsibility to harmonize safety in a way to enhance the performances of the railways, which can not only be within South Africa, it has to transverse across the borders so that we reach the destinations, we transport those commodities which maybe the other mode of transport does not have that advantage. So all this affirmation is within the regional documents, within the protocol on transport, communication, and meteorology, which states that we have a greater potential to offer safe, efficient, and environmentally friendly transportation system across the region. The Regional Infrastructure Development Master Plan further indicates that the railway transport has been identified as one of the pillars for growth and development throughout the SADC region. One of the things that we continue to witness is the investments that are made by our governments. The previous speaker also highlighted on it, that there are a lot of significant investments into the railways, mainly in the form of projects, with that aim of enhancing our performances across the regional borders, across our countries, so that indeed we can enhance that contribution. On Wednesday, there is a speaker that highlighted on this project, the Gazangula Bridge, which it is widely known that is one of the best worldwide, the bridge that connects 4 countries. And that is those investments that are made for us as the railways, indeed to transverse safely, to interoperate safely, and to enhance our contribution towards economic development. With that being said, with this presentation, the next slide. With this presentation, as we're saying, the standards remain key. We want to highlight that without effective use of common guidelines and standards and regulations, as we have witnessed with the management of COVID, as the railways will continue to experience challenges which are very common to us. Most of them, they were highlighted since the beginning of the conference, even this morning. One of them being the theft and vandalism. This is a challenge that we're battling with it as the railways. Hence, we're saying without that harmonized guideline standards, without that harmonized regulations, we are most probably to continue being faced with this kind of challenges. It's a lot of them. Incompatible gauges, poor infrastructure, poor rolling stock, the projects that are not succeeding mainly because of lack of common standards. Project, it gets completed. The next thing, it cannot be effective, or it cannot serve the purpose that it was meant for, due to lack of compatibility with the other system, due to lack of the standards that should have been considered during the implementation or during the development of that project. The region, or all of us, we continue to experience increasing rate of railway occurrences and other incidents. We have heard a lot about the security incidents. We have heard a lot about the railway occurrences related to the management of human factors, all those challenges that continue to border us as the railways, which they are mainly because of the lack of application of common guideline standards and regulations by us as the railways, as an integrated system. What I'm trying to push forward here is that if I am using a standard that in my own, I believe it is good, it's yielding that value, it is still very important for us as an integrated system, for whatever that we use to be harmonized so that we can be able to interoperate. Within the standards that I say, they are key. Those kind of guidelines, they are provided. And as we have heard that some of the standards, we may develop them as the regulator. I want to put forward this morning that standards are developed by consensus, and we welcome all the stakeholders on board. At the doors of the regulators, at any time, they are open for you to collaborate. Let's hold hands together and let us make sure that standards are developed, regulations are developed that are very meaningful for us, not only for one country, throughout the region, for us to enhance the performances of the railways from one border to another. We continue to lose business, we continue to lose clients as the railways due to perceived poor safety compliance. Those turnaround times that are lengthy and not attractive, really impacting the efficiency and reliability of the railways. This presentation this morning, it says, let us enhance the use of standards, let us enhance the use of regulations, with a classic example that we have learned through the COVID-19 management, to ensure that the railways move forward and they contribute to economic development nationally and throughout the SADC region. Please, page. With that being said, our sustainable solution for us as the railways lies in the development, implementation, and compliance to harmonized railway safety standards and other regulatory tools, which is what will enable us to sustain and what will enable us to adapt to any change that we come across. The next slide. A question that we may be asking ourselves is, how can the standards really serve that purpose to manage all those risks that we're hearing about? On that note, let us quickly look into the purpose of railway safety standards. They provide technical requirements for the management of safe railway operations. In other words, when we are all uniformly using them, we will be compatible and we will be able to operate, to interoperate, and enhance our movement across the regions, across our national regions, across our borders, and across the SADC region as a whole. Standards ensure identification and management of railway safety risks. We have just indicated the challenges with the use of standards. with the use of these technical requirements that are provided within the standards that are provided within the regulations, as the railways will be able to identify those challenges proactively and be able to manage them on time. They enhance uniform and safe railway management throughout the SADC region, promote safety, security, and interoperability throughout the region, reduce operational occurrences and any other incidents that may have negative impact on safe railway operations, promote the use of rail as the safest and economic transport system throughout the region. This is emphasized this morning. We have heard it from the previous speaker. As the railways, really, we have that potential, and with the use of standards, we can enhance that economic contribution, being the safest mode of transport. The promotion of security, we have heard about it, that we are faced with challenges, and with the use of standards, we can mitigate all those risks related to securities. Next one. The benefits. Using the standards also, you enhance compatibility, uniform operations. I have spoken about it. You enhance sustainable designs. You will see as we go into the highlight of what is contained within the standards, where they provide the management of risk throughout different life cycle phases. So as you design we heard of a lot of good innovations through this conference. So using the standards, those good innovations can really assist us as the railways to enhance the designs, to enhance how we operate, to enhance the maintenance and modification of rolling stock, infrastructure, and any other initiatives that we have. They reduce failures, high maintenance costs, railway occurrences, and other incidents. They reduce transit times and corridor turnaround times. If we are compliant to the standards, we are most likely to move within time, to be fast, efficient, and reliable, and that indeed it will enhance the performances of the railways. Ultimately, it will improve the cross-border harmonization and operations and interoperability, and increase our contribution, as I have already said. The next slide. Next slide. Next slide. With that being said, a question again that we may be asking ourselves is, but do we have the standards? And we know for sure, especially our South Africa, we do have the standards that we are using from time to time. We're using them within the safety management to issue the permits. Today, with this presentation, we're taking appreciation of us as the railways, not only within South Africa, but across the region. This slide highlights the progress, how far we are as the SADC, the potential that will enable us to move our commodities, the potential that will enable us to collaborate and reach agreements to move our cargoes, to transport those passengers from one country to another. We have a list of standards that have been adopted by the SADC. This includes the 89 SADC Harmonized Text 89, 90, 91, 92, up to 96 is a list of 8 of them. The next slide. And for time's sake, allow me not to go into detail for all of them. However, I want to highlight just a few for us to have an appreciation and to have this knowledge that you can engage, you can collaborate, you can interoperate with the other operators across the region for reasons that we have the standards that are common to us. Like I said, a classic example was the regulations that were published for the management of COVID, which they took us to where we are today. Within this set of 8, the first one being the SADC Harmonized Text 89, it is a railway safety management and is a general standard that set the scene, that provides the general safety management guideline. It guides that uniformity in the management of railway safety throughout the region, and it emphasizes the risk management approach that we have just said, that the standard enables you to identify the risks and manage those risks. And all application of the elements of these standards is based on your complexity. What exactly do you do, your detailed operations, the type of commodities that you transport, are you a passenger rail? And it provides that requirement that helps you to manage those types of risks. The next one. The next set that I want to highlight is a set of those that are referred to as engineering and operational safety standards, which are the standards that contains the technical requirements, contains the management of risk throughout the life cycle phases. Please page to the next slide. These standards are mainly the very specific standards for the technical components of the railway system. I'm referring to the tracks, civil and electrical infrastructure. We have the standard that is SADC Harmonized Text 91. In other words, when we're managing our risks relating to our extent, relating to our tracks, civil and electrical infrastructure, we are harmonized, all of us across the borders. This standard has been adopted by the SADC for all of us to implement the requirements contained in this standard so that we can enhance our movement, we can enhance our interoperability across the borders using the technical requirements provided in this standard. We appreciate the views that were brought in here to say we have to collaborate and get the views if there is a need for amendment within the practices of developing the standard. That can be done to enhance the content and to enhance the implementation of those standards. The next one that has been harmonized is the rolling stock standard. Yes, our rolling stock needs to be designed for the infrastructure, and all that requirements are contained within the SADC Harmonized Text Standard number 92. 96 contains the requirements for train authorization, train control, and all telecommunication system. I'm highlighting these three, which is our core technical components of the railways across the regional borders, including 95. Let me not forget to highlight SADC Harmonized Text 95, which is a standard that provides those requirements for train operations. So what we are learning through this presentation is if we are all throughout the region utilizing the requirements of the standard, where we are encountering constraints, engage with your interface partner across the border and let us agree based on the content provided within this standard. The next slide. This is just the slides that highlight the detailed content. As I said, 91 is for track, civil and electrical infrastructure. There we're just highlighting what it provides. As we said also, that it provides the management of risk throughout the different life cycle phases. As you're thinking, as you're conceiving to extend your lines, as you're conceiving to do some amendments, to do anything on the track, civil and electrical infrastructure, the technical requirements that will help us to be compatible with our interfacing partners are contained within this standard. Next one. Please, page. The next one is rolling stock. Please allow me not to emphasize. The next one again is level crossing standard. We have had even yesterday with a presentation that highlights the amount of occurrences that challenges the railways at level crossings. The standard provides requirements for us nationally across the borders to uniformly manage the risks for level crossings. The standard provides the physical assessment model that will assist the railway operators to assess the risks related to level crossings and guide on how you're supposed to identify your risks and mitigate your risks. It promotes a common approach. Hence, I say the standards remain key in any other regulations. Next slide.
Ms. Makwela, we have 2 questions for you on the discuss chat, and we only have 4 minutes for you left. Can I please request that we deal with these 2 questions, and then at the end of the session, if we have more time, you will come back and speak on the areas you couldn't finish in your presentation. Is that okay?
Can I just finish with the last slide?
Is
the
this
last 2 slides? Thank you, Nangamso.
All right.
Thank
No
you. Please page to the last 2 slides. Yes, I wanted to highlight that over and above that, throughout the SADC region, there is an initiative that establishes the Railway Regulatory Association to facilitate information sharing. As we have said, the standards are adopted. This body aims to facilitate that common sharing, to facilitate the governance, and to enhance implementation of these standards, and to advocate for any other to implement the standards and to comply to the standards for the region. The next one. The next slide, please. With that being said, for us as the railways, our sustainable solution remains the effective implementation and compliance to adopted standards, continual identification of risks, participation by all members. As I've said, we are an integrated system and our success depends on the others. Continual benchmarking and relationship with other organizations. We have heard it again from the previous speakers. Organizations like International Union of Railways, International Organization for Standardization, the ISO. These organizations, they do develop standards for the railways. So with this plea, we are saying, as railway members, can we continue to research and benchmark and develop relationships where we can learn and participate, and when necessary, adopt other standards, as it is a continual process for us to continue enhancing our performances. And in conclusion, the last slide for conclusion, I conclude by saying, enhancing standards is a collaborative approach, and together as railway stakeholders, through effective implementation, through effective compliance to harmonize standards, like the global world has done for the management of COVID, we shall all grow the railways and adapt to new normal and safely interoperate and sustain the railways into the future. I thank you.
Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. And I can see that there's wealth of information, there's wealth of knowledge around the railway sector. And I can see there's 2 questions on the chat, but I'm going to ask you, Ms. Makwela, to respond to those questions on the chat. I will not be able to allow for a verbal response. There's another question that just came through. So your presentation was well received. Thank you very much. And please do respond to the questions as we engage with the next speaker. Our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, is Ms. Misila Nhlapo, who's the Chief Executive Officer of African Rail Industry Association of South Africa. She will be delivering a presentation called Third-Party Access, a Key Driver to Sustainable Railways. Third-Party Access, a Key Driver to Sustainable Railways. Ms. Misila Nhlapo, welcome. Misila? Well, Matsilanyana, while we wait for Misila to come in with the presentation, I'm just going to read through the questions that we have on the chat, and hopefully we can buy time and respond to those questions and engage our audience. The first question, in fact, two questions from Sma Ngamo. The first one is, what plans does the regulator have to support the SADC region in implementing SADC SARA HT93, which is the Human Safety Management Standards? The second question is, how can operators and other stakeholders from the SADC region be included more in drafting of these standards that they end up being adopted? Would you respond to those two questions, please?
Yes. I see the first question from SMA. How can operators and other stakeholders from the SADC region be included more in the drafting of these regulations? The RSR, sorry, Nangamso, there was another question relating to 93.
Okay, so the other two questions, one is from Fundo Kaha, the other one from Palisa Maria Oliphant, and they are not talking about the HT93 standards. So are you comfortable quickly responding to?
Yes, I'm very comfortable. It's only that my mind was prepared to answer the question relating how can the RSR support the region on the implementation of SADC Harmonized Text 93. And my response wanted to say the RSR is continuously, as I said, within our mandate, we are responsible for the harmonization of railway safety across the region. So we are fully participating at most of the structures within SARA and within the SADC region. And through those platforms, we engage intensively where there are need for support in terms of education and awareness. We do implement any kind of a request that will be coming from those structures that we participate in. So it's not only the HT93, which is human factors management, but it's all the harmonized text, because the RSR plays a very significant role for that harmonization and also up to the implementation, up to that level. Hence, we brought it to this discussion now to say, this has been done, we are supporting it, and we anticipate that we shall have that uniformity, and that uniformity will come when the standards are clearly understood and clearly implemented.
Absolutely. I'm going
the
to
other one.
The other two questions, they will remain in the chat, and I'm going to go back to welcoming Misila on stage. Please do respond to those questions on the chat as the audience is engaging your presentation, Ms. Mkwela. Misila, I see you are now live, and welcome on stage. This is a good friend of mine, and I'm very excited to have here on this session, and I'm so glad that she's just joined us. I know that she will be giving us a wealth of information about the railway sector. Welcome on stage, Misila.
Thank you very much, Nangamso. I think it's always appreciated to be on a platform with such a formidable woman. So thank you so much. I believe the organizers will put up my, my presentation. In the meantime, to give a big background on the African Rail Industry Association. We recently changed our name, and the reasoning behind that is with the integration of the continent, we can no longer see rail as a South African only entity looking inward, but there's a great continent that is waiting for us to implement the integration of the continent, and thereby ensuring that we as South Africa would lead the conversation on integrating the continent, the standards of what standards are we going to use, instead of waiting for different countries to bring different standards, and thereby excluding the South African manufacturing sector in the manufacturing of projects such as the 1064 and some of the major projects where, as a country, we have had a significant contribution. Or rather, we, as the manufacturing sector, we expected that the local content policy would be in our favor. Can I have the presentation, please? There you go. My topic is third-party access, a key driver to sustainable railways. They gave me a fancy topic, and third-party access is something that is very close to my heart. So I'll be looking at sustainability, exactly what it is, and if the definition is correct. I'll be looking at the United Nations Sustainable Goals. This will also give us a direction in South Africa and the continent on the direction of rail, where we're supposed to be. Looking at the rail reform, the historical background, directly linking it to third-party access, the practical implementation of third-party, and the South African reality. Now, sustainability, the normal definition of what sustainability is, it says it maintains the system without degrading them. However, we are now talking about regeneration, of which is a new concept which takes sustainability even further. Regeneration development is working to reverse the degeneration of system. In South Africa, the South African Rail Index context, the underutilized network, the network that has been severely compromised by criminals out there and business people, if I may add, particularly the scrapyard. So we have to look for not only sustainability, but the regeneration of what we have lost. How do we sustain transport? Provision of services and infrastructure for mobility of goods and people, advancing the people and goals and goods, advancing the economic and social development to benefit today and future generations in a manner that is safe, affordable, accessible, particularly for the marginalized communities, women that use the transport, men and children that use railways as a means of transport to get to work, school, and the resilient with minimizing emissions and environmental impact. So those are some of the few ways that rail industry can assist in terms of providing the services that are required. Sustainable railways, we have always known that the railways have been acknowledged as a key enabler in economic growth. Railways for me is very close to my heart. If it wasn't for railways, Misila would not be here. My father worked for Spoornet, and that's where he met my mother. And so railways has stories, has such rich story. So we have to protect what is ours. Railways is supposed to be sustainable transport, now recognized as a vital driver of sustainable development. For us, it's larger than that. For us, it's about ensuring that we as a country with over 100 years in the railway sector, we are able to continue with that strong history. And say transport is a backbone of a country. Any country that wishes to develop, their logistics plays a major role in terms of growing that economy. When a system doesn't work, how do we export? How do we import? How do we sustainably build a manufacturing sector? How do we sustainably service clients such as the mining industry to ensure that they're able to reach their customers on time in an efficient manner? So that is our backbone of a country, as the transport, the rail industry being the backbone of the sector. Now, this is a comparative rail density. And for Europe, you realize that there's a significant number. I think for Europe is 8.45 and down to Africa where we're looking at 1.53. It tells us a story that there is room for growth. And Africa is the last frontier in terms of rail development. Well, other countries, they're somewhere, but they are growing. And something very interesting with the railways, particularly the European railways, the trade between European countries is over 60%. Now, can you imagine with the people that we have on the continent, the industry that we have on the continent, what more could be achieved? We can achieve the goals that we have set for ourselves for 2063. We can achieve the growth of making sure that Africa relies on the potential that is offered by Africans, especially its women and youth. This is the only way that we can grow as an industry. We can't rely on the world, we have to rely on ourselves. And if one thing that COVID has taught us is to be sustainable, rely on ourselves. So we cannot wait to be saved, we have to save ourselves. This is our country, we need to dictate what the terms are and not allow people going from the east, from the west, to come to South Africa and therefore disadvantaging the South African economy and actually creating jobs in their countries. This should stop and no more. But we as an industry, we need to be serious about that. We can't wait for government, RSR, or any other organization out there. This is our country, this is our sector. We need to work together to ensure that we protect what is ours. A few years ago, the United Nations issued the sustainable goals. Now, it talks about achieving a blueprint, a better and more sustainable future for all, to address the global changes we face, including poverty, inequality, climate change, environmental degradation, peace, and justice. Now, if you look at the UN Sustainable Goals, it talks directly to where we are as a railway sector. And in most instances, we as the railways, and particularly private sector, are able to address the majority of the challenges that have been addressed, at least identified by the United Nations. So we are better placed to contribute significantly on the goals that have been set by the United Nations. Now, some of the goals include decent work and economic growth. Economic growth cannot take place without having the right infrastructure in place. More railways will drive economic growth. Therefore, sustainability of the railways will contribute immensely to increase intra-Africa trade. Intra-Africa trade became operational on the 1st of January this year. Have we benefited from it? Is it going to take longer to be operationalized? What is our contribution as private sector to intra-trade Africa? What is our plan? But we should not work in silos. This is important that we start speaking in one voice as South Africans, consolidate the infrastructure that we have in place and the skills that we have in place. Some of the participants here, they're in the education space of safety, the railway safety, and those skills should not stay in South Africa only. Can we perhaps also include, when we intra-Africa trade, can we trade our skills as well? So we want to see that happening, that we not only to produce, but also going to export skills. Looking at clean energy and the climate, carbon dioxide and greenhouse emissions continue to rise. The challenge is, however, to move to low zero emissions without harming the economy. Transport sector is the major contributor to climate emissions, but rail greenhouse gas emission is less than 1%. Now, that is a number worldwide. Now, imagine what we can achieve if we move a number of freight from road to rail. A shift from road to rail will increase safety and remove sources of pollution that shorten millions of lives. Rail will alleviate congestion and reduce carbon emissions. Now, for me, I see the N3, I see the N1. When it's a long weekend, we know that you stay away from N1 because a number of traffic that goes towards north is just huge. Can we get to a point where the ZCC becomes a partner in railways, so that come Easter time, the ZCC can then safely transport its congregants through rail, where in Moria there is a railway station. Can we get to a point where we identify lines actually that passenger friendly? We know that N1 is always busy. We know that N12 is always busy. Why can't we look at those lines and introduce railways to ensure that we save lives, we decrease the amount of money that we spend maintaining our roads, and also in terms of creating an infrastructure or road infrastructure that can be used by normal cars. Let's move from road to rail. I don't like driving, but I'm a very good driver. But sometimes it gets tiring. If I were to be able to leave my home and go to Johannesburg and go shopping there, that will not only restrict my shopping radius, but I will be able to go and spend money elsewhere. I would want to buy fresh vegetables at Mama Dlamini that is sitting and selling her fresh vegetables. And I think it's actually quite cheaper there. Can I move to the next slide, please?
Masila, you're going to have to choose one slide, my friend, that you're going to have to talk to before I send you to the lounge on table 4 for the guests to engage you more on the wealth of information you share.
Yeah, I have graphs on there. Can we move to graphs, because I want to demonstrate something. Okay, now this is the South African network. Can I one slide up? 36,000 kilometers in track, 23,000 route kilometers. To replace it, it will cost us 1.5 trillion rands, which is an equivalent to that of Germany. So this is how big our railway sector is. Next slide, please. Now, if you look at the freight volumes from, I think it's 1949 somewhere, there's an increase with the totality of the volumes. But then you'll notice that then on the green one, which is a general freight business, it decreases and decreases significantly. But where it starts to decrease is the introduction of your iron ore line and the coal line. So the opportunities that are available private sector operators are immense. And actually, we think that over 70% capacity is available for third-party operators. This third-party access is access onto the network. It is not privatization. Privatization is when you sell state-owned entities. We are only seeking access. As much as you and I can drive on the N3, that's what private operators are looking for. There's another slide, please. The general freight business, we know that there is a great underutilization, which does not only cost the infrastructure owner, but in general, as South Africans, we pay a lot of money for something that we don't use. So sustainable railways can only be achieved through third-party access. And I think we can move to the last slide. The other one, just one more up. Here's my mandate from my members, from agricultural sector, from forestry sector. My mandate to you and to government is that what we seek is about continuity and sustainability against disruption and stagnation. It's about moving forward versus regressing. We have to safeguard what we have already achieved. We cannot put at risk what we have anymore. We cannot gamble our future away. And I would like to, just as the last one, I can show my little nice, beautiful baby. We used to travel by train from Springs to Joburg, and there were train stations, of which this is my message to PRASA. I would like to see Springs, Pollard Park, New Era, Scapenrust, Brakpan, Anzac, Apex, New Fontaine, Pinoni, Danswat, Boksburg East, Boksburg, East Rand, Angelo, Delmo, Germiston, President, Driehoek, Geldenhuys, Cleveland, Toronga, Denver, George Goch, GP, Ellis Park, Doornfontein, Johannesburg, Paki, Josmawoneng. This is what I'm asking for. Can we work together? It is not only your responsibility as Transnet and PRASA. We are here. This is our country. The only thing that we have is to work together to ensure that railways survive. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stella. Samira, I do agree. She is highly passionate. She's very, very passionate. And like Dr. Mabila has said, I like it when practical solutions are being presented instead of theoretical ideas. The example around ZCC is quite a great one because it is a practical solution we can all relate to. There is one question, Ms. Stella, that I'm going to ask you to respond to via text. There is a question from Vundo Baha. Please, can you pick up that question and respond via text. You also have an opportunity of engaging the audience further in the lounge on table 4. We've set up table 4 for you to engage your audience on various other questions that they may have or comments that they may have. I am going to swiftly then move to our next speaker, who is Mr. Charles Kadieba. I believe he is ready for me. Charles is the chairman of Kijura Reach Logistics, and he will be talking to us about addressing vandalism to enhance railway safety and security. We have heard a lot about vandalism, and Misila is emphasized how we need to be taking responsibility in looking after our own infrastructure. So the next presentation will be talking about addressing vandalism to enhance railway security. Mr. Charles Kadieba.
Thank you. As introduced, my name is Charles Kateba. I'm the former managing director of Uganda Railways Corporation, and I'm currently working as the chairman Kijura Reach Logistics, located in Port Portal City, west of Uganda. As you all will agree, vandalism and rail safety are connected. Sometimes we mention these words concurrently, but don't put much emphasis on them. But in recent years, it has become very, very increasingly important to focus on the issue of vandalism in order to address safety. If I may borrow the words of Lord Frank Davis, preventing trespass and vandalism on the railway is one of the most important safety priorities for the rail industry. He said this while he was addressing a committee on railway safety, and especially as regard to level crossings. Now, vandalism may occur spontaneously, but often is a result of or aided by or abetted by encroachment and trespass, which seriously impair railway security. We will focus on vandalism that affect safety directly or indirectly. Next slide. Now, we need to look at the major causes of vandalism. Why has it become, in recent times, more pronounced and very important? You will all agree that there's been a major global shift from rail to road in the last 20 to 25 years in particular, maybe going up to 30 years. This has reduced the direct investment that goes into rail infrastructure development, but also in operational costs, whereby, for example, level crossing management and rate of way maintenance has reduced in terms of human presence. The economic restructuring of state enterprises as a result of the above has led to over-concentration of operational operational and commercial return by state-owned enterprises and PPP operators. Also, there's a major shift from manual to mechanized maintenance, which leads to the loss of first-line defense by track maintenance gangs that often live with their families along the line. Uncontrolled urbanization is another contributor, because the homeless or poor urban dwellers often invade the expansive rail reserve for markets, makeshift kiosks, and temporary shelters. This is abetted by politics of patronage. Politicians often directly or indirectly encourage encroachment of these poor urban dwellers, and even in the rural areas, encroachment that takes the form of farming or temporary activity is often supported by local politicians in return for votes. In the developing countries or the recipient funding countries, there has been also a lot of indulgence by development agencies, especially the multilateral and Western donors and lenders who insist on mandatory compensation of all project affected persons, irrespective of how they came to the affected area. This encourages new arrivals and economic agents hoping to cash in on the compensation that comes with the new projects. But the most difficult to manage are actually hardcore criminals. In many cities, especially vagabonds and drug addicts, and in the rural areas, especially in war affected areas, there are people who specifically target rail infrastructure and installations, both just to let off their steam, but sometimes for the scrap and other fixtures that they can use for sale for their own benefit. Finally, I want to talk about the economic opportunities. Large scrap dealers and steel processors in particular, and minor white metal smiths, such as aluminum or bronze, they also target these targets. I mean, they buy the scrap that has been taken from our facilities and installations. But they're also land grabbers who use vandalism as a front to access the rail and then later annex some of those lands in a more legal way. Next slide. What are the major types of vandalism that affect rail safety? We are looking at the track and its fixtures, bridges, culverts, signaling power lines, terminals and stations. The track, when disrupted, and the bridges and signaling, they often lead to serious service disruptions, in some cases to catastrophic derailment. Rolling stock, in my part of the world, because our locomotives are predominantly diesel, there's a lot of fuel siphoning, but also where locomotives or wagons are parked in the remote areas, we have loss of major components such as couplers, cables, brake shoes, and other linkages. Again, these lead to service disruptions, but also can lead to huge economic costs of maintenance. So where we have to replace these components. We look at also the communication systems, masts, power supply, solar panels, batteries, cables, etc. These lead to severe disruptions and communicated related accidents. Again, the next slide gives the examples of vandalism broken down into infrastructure and then rolling stock. It's not uncommon in recent times to hear a whole station being vandalized or a bridge. I've heard of a bridge, I think in one European country, that was completely stolen overnight. We'll quickly go to the next slide. So what are the solutions to vandalism? I've broken down the solutions according to the causes. Now, how do we address the global market shift from railroad to transport? In my opinion, we have to make rail relevant in order to attract new investments. We have to make it smart, we make it address the needs of the people, especially both freighters and passengers, such that we can do almost similar or better than the road services. In order to address the economic restructuring that has led to over-concentration on operation and commercial returns, we need to review the structure to ensure that adequate infrastructure protection is maintained and not only focus at the returns, but make sure, especially the state does not neglect its responsibility of maintaining the infrastructure and making investments to renew the infrastructure, even improve it. We also need to make sure that where mechanized maintenance has been adopted, it is adopted together with smart surveillance and rapid response systems, such as satellite, drone, remote sensing, and remote sensing. In order to control urbanization that spills over to our railway system, we need to involve local communities in planning the new developments or improvements on the existing systems to take care of the communities around them. Involving the communities might involve, for example, together with the local communities, creating housing in railway reserves that the community may take advantage of, and therefore feel that they are part of the system. Next slide. How do we address political patronage? I'm sure it's a very difficult issue and very politically sensitive, but I believe we can have a good start if we have engagement of the local communities directly to convince them that the developments that we have, the services that we provide are good for the community, and that they should not look at the short-term gains, but the long-term benefits of these systems. But also recruiting managers and leaders from within the community will help them feel like they belong to the services that we provide. The harder one will be how to engage the donor community, especially the European Union based, because many of their local legislations insist on not disenfranchising project affected persons, but things that we operate in. Some of the small incentives that are provided are seen as huge, and therefore we should try to modify our strategy. Addressing the hardcore communities will be through toughening of our laws and policies that make processing of scrap or illicit scrap unattractive. For example, we could provide tax breaks for anyone who can prove the source of his raw materials, and anyone who do the other way around can have negative sanctions against them. about economic opportunities. Again, these people can be made to understand that it's not sustainable to operate using stolen scrap. In fact, in the case of Uganda, I know 2 steel factories that broke down, that had shut down after they finished buying the scrap from our dilapidated railway network. But I think the most forward-looking solution are the technology solutions. We need to recognize that there is always going to be vandalism on the systems that we build. And therefore, we need to have appropriate design for infrastructure. For example, if we can have higher embankments and replace all steel sleepers with concrete sleepers, have vandal-proof fittings, and instead of cable and other earth-based communication system, if we introduce digital satellite communication. I know this is coming as a natural development for some of the new and high-speed networks, but we need also to adopt this maybe in a more appropriate level for the smaller railway networks. In heavily encroached areas, heavily populated areas, we need to create bypasses, overpasses, and underpasses. This is a solution that Uganda Railways is adopting for the areas around Kampala that are heavily encroached upon. We also need to adopt robust rolling stock designs that make it very hard for people to access cables and other soft components. For high-speed trains that is possible, we can also have embedded cabling along the track, and in some cases, we may need to have separation walls and electric fencing to protect the infrastructure. Now, in conclusion, we need to recognize that vandalism is a very serious security problem that affects railway safety. And therefore, in whatever we plan, it must be central in our strategies and programs. There are many direct and underlying causes of vandalism. They therefore require varying solutions, ranging from social-political to engineering and technology solutions. Governments and development partners need to review their policies, laws, and practices to protect better the railway assets for safe railway operations. I believe that if we have this, then we will be able to address railway safety and have a sustainable rail operations. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kadiba. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. I don't have any specific questions to you, but I have a few comments I'd like to make. You make very valuable points, especially around the inclusion of the communities in protecting the infrastructure and making sure that our rail infrastructure does not continue to get affected by theft and vandalism. This is a point that was raised by a previous speaker, where she emphasized the issue of maintaining the systems without degrading them. And also, while we do that, we make sure that we take ownership as the society, as the community, over and above the operators, as well as the infrastructure owners. I do just have another question that just popped in here for you, Mr. Kadiba. The question is from Dr. Mabila, and it says, don't you think it is time for SADC to assemble a barrier removal team to deal with theft and vandalism. Would you like to respond to that?
Could you repeat the question?
Don't you think it is time for SADC to assemble a barrier removal team to deal with the theft and vandalism? This refers to the SADC region.
To have a barrier removal team?
Yes.
I think those are solutions that can be looked at.
As I said, the solutions will be varied and they will depend on the local situation and especially affordability. In urban areas, for example, we really cannot do without permanent unmanned automatic barriers if we are going to keep, for example, level crossing lanes. But also permanent barriers such as high walls and electric fences are going to become necessary. Of course, they divide communities and therefore they are not very attractive. But if we design the infrastructure with such communities in mind, then the bypasses, the underpasses would have been created in such a way that they don't divide communities. The communities across the lines can easily access the other side. And that will discourage people from jumping over or building over our reserves.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. The next question for you comes from Kenny Makati. Kenny is asking, will any amendments on legislation assist in curbing theft and vandalism if the society does not understand the impact of their actions within the railway environment?
I believe that any legislation to be helpful, it has to be developed with the local communities in mind, and they have to get involved. For example, I know that a lot of people do not benefit
I think I'm losing Charles there from connectivity issues. Charles, if you can still respond without your video being on, please go ahead. Can you hear me? All right, ladies and gentlemen, I will then on that point, there's another comment that is just came through, but on that point, I will just get myself ready to welcome our last but not least speaker. Oh, Charles, you're back. You've got another 2.5 minutes to finish off the question. You can do so without your video so that you will see if you can improve your connectivity that way. Please go ahead, sir.
Did I mute my video?
Yes, please. Can you try one more time? 1 more minute to go, then we can move on to introduce our very last speaker for this session.
Okay, what's the next question?
If you can complete the question you were answering, we didn't get everything you were saying there. The next question, I would invite you to the lounge to be able to deal with further questions from the audience.
We're talking about legislation. Yes, it's true that many people may not appreciate
the new legislation and therefore not support it. But for any legislation to be effective, it must be developed with the local community participation. For example, fines that are imposed on people that are found vandalizing the infrastructure, penalties that may be put on the local processors and exporters of the steel scrap, the land grabbers, for example. If we make it a point to convince the communities around the railway network that this is their network. For example, some lines may be developed not as national, but as local government systems, or they may join into local government systems so that the local governments that give away land on bordering these railway lines and infrastructure will be able to convince the local communities that it is in their interest to protect these services and systems.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the response. I am now, ladies and gentlemen, going to humbly welcome our very last but not least speaker for the session, Miss Isabel von Ven, who will be talking to us about level crossing and trespass incidents, a worldwide safety challenge for the railway operations. Please welcome Miss Isabel von Ven to deliver her presentation. Isabel, welcome aboard.
Good morning. I'm very proud and honored to present you today the UIC Global Railway Safety Issues. I will share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Perfectly so. It's on.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I will share with you some UIC statistics and also present level crossing safety, trespass and suicide prevention activities carried out by UIC on a worldwide level. Now I invite you to watch this short video produced jointly by Network Rail in the UK and the UIC at the occasion of ILCAD, the International Level Crossing Awareness Day, on the 10th of June 2021, to target distracted level crossing users with the motto, "Distraction kills, beware the bubble." Sorry. There is no good risk assessment for possible safety improvement without any accurate data. Our safety database exists since 2006 and records descriptions of significant railway accidents. All UIC members are invited to participate on a voluntary basis. It contains information on more than 40,000 accidents in 32 countries. On the basis of the information contained in our database, the UIC issues 2 statistical reports on accidents each year, a public report available on internet and a confidential report with an access limited to participating countries. You see here the split of by type of accidents in 2020. You see that 78% of accidents involved unauthorized persons on railway tracks, 13% involved level crossing users. That means that over 90% of accidents are caused by third parties. Those accidents, and particularly collisions at level crossings with long and heavy vehicles, might cause long rail and road traffic disruption, huge damages on the rail infrastructure, the surroundings and the rolling stocks, and also high impact in the media and the public. Casualties be our customers, railway staff or level crossing users. It has also a social and economic impact in case of casualties or because of traffic interruption. According to the European Railway Agency and UIC, the number of accidents at level crossings has been decreasing since 2018, more at active level crossings than at passive crossings. Meanwhile, the number of active crossings has increased and the number of passive crossings has very slightly decreased. According to ERA, in the 28 countries of the European Union, there are over 100,000 level crossings, of which over the half is protected. We count 300 fatalities annually due to accidents at level crossings, and total related costs are estimated to 1 billion euros a year, with 850 million euros for casualties only. Level crossing user fatalities represent over 30% of all railway fatalities, but only 1% of road fatalities. In 2020, we've seen a decrease of level crossing accidents during lockdown periods because of the COVID-19 pandemic, although rail and road traffic had dropped drastically during the various lockdown periods in many countries around the world. Several collisions and casualties at level crossings were unfortunately reported. This, coupled to a greater number of trespass events, has not meant that running fewer trains reduces the number of instances. With the end of lockdowns, as the number of trains started to recover towards nearer the former normal levels, there was a greater risk that the number of collisions and casualties at level crossings might have increased, especially as drivers and pedestrians became used to far fewer trains running. Here we see clearly a decrease of trespassing cases in the first lockdown period in April and May, and an increase at almost the same usual level during the second lockdown period in the autumn. In some cases, some people, dog walkers, joggers, families with kids, started to use level crossings or tracks on open lines as lifestyles changed with working from home. Some countries saw an increase in near misses with those new level crossing users or long tracks. An ideal world would be without level crossings, but we know that it's not possible. And according to UIC Safety Database estimates, there are over 500,000 level crossings worldwide, the USA accounting for almost 40% and Europe over 20%. It is therefore vital that road users crossing the railways at this interface respect the traffic signs and signals that are there to protect pedestrians, cyclists, and road users. Level crossing safety issues are global, and the UIC Global Level Crossing Network, shared by Alan Spence from Network Rail in the UK, gathers over 40 members, mainly in railway infrastructure managers, but also people from the road sector and academics from the EU, USA, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. GLCN program of work is mainly based on the 5 E's: engaging, evaluating, engineering, enforcement, and education. As far as engaging is concerned, there is no possible safety improvement at the road and rail interface if those sectors do not collaborate. When you know that in the EU only 1% of road accidents and fatalities happen at level crossings, and that those accidents represent almost 30% for the railways, you understand why the road sector is so reluctant to tackle jointly this issue with the railway sector. This is why over the last decade, UIC, the International Union of Railways in Paris, has been collaborating with various international organizations to kick off a dialogue with the road sector. The main results were UIC video produced with the European Commission at the occasion of ILCAT 2010. We have organized also jointly with the European Commission various workshops on level crossing safety. I am personally a member of the UNECE in Geneva, working party on road traffic safety at the origin of the Vienna Convention and the road traffic signs and signals. In 2014, we set up together a group of experts on level crossing safety that published a final report of recommendations in 2017. The UIC and the UN in Geneva jointly produced a video for decision makers at the occasion of ILCAT 2014. UIC also with the International Road Transport Union and Operation Lifesaver Estonia produced level crossing safety flyers for professional drivers available in over 20 languages on our website. We are currently working with the International Road Federation on future safety flyers for drivers of light vehicles. We have been collaborating with FIA, the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile, the Automotive International Federation. We are evaluating also in our group. In 2021, we have carried out level crossing risk analysis method. We launched a questionnaire to make a benchmark that we sent to our members at the end of July, and the results will be presented at the next group meeting on the 4th of November. We aim at publishing UIC guidelines for our members in 2022. About engineering, our group is a platform to exchange on best practices. As far as engineering is concerned, we tackle also innovative solutions. The UIC also coordinated an EU project called Safer LC and published a toolbox available online that offers updated road and rail infrastructure best engineering measures to increase safety at level crossings. For education, ILCAD, the International Level Crossing Awareness Day, is the most successful education-related piece of work of our group. In 2009, it was stated that some members of the group were already organizing level crossing safety campaigns on a national level only. Decision was taken to fix an international day in June each year to celebrate level crossing safety. Today, almost 50 countries, including South Africa, take part in the campaign, mainly railway members of UIC and road safety advocates, carrying out smaller or greater activities. The event is launched every year by a participating country through an international conference co-organized with UIC. Last year and this year, we had to organize it remotely because of COVID-19. So on the 10th of June, we organized an international online conference in 3 languages that took place at the initiative of UIC and Network Rail. We had over 300 people from 47 countries from all continents, with speakers from all around the world, including from South Africa. 98% of collisions with vehicles at level crossings are caused by failure to comply with the traffic rules, either deliberately or accidentally. Vulnerable people also overlook sometimes those signs and signals. Every year, ILCAD targets a different public, and this year we targeted all kinds of distracted people. The theme was distraction, with the motto, "Distraction kills, beware the bubble." I invite you to watch the second video published for ILCAD 2021. This is an example of activities carried out during ILCAD in Russia from in the whole country. Railways, jointly with volunteers and the police forces, carried out some blitz actions at level crossings, either awareing users of the dangers at and around level crossings, handing over safety flyers, and giving fines to offenders. In some countries like India, they advertised a lot in the whole country and had a huge press coverage. They decided also in the South Central Railway region to remove 88 level crossings from that zone at the end of April. I invite you to save those dates. The 14th edition of the International Level Crossing Awareness Day campaign will take place on the 9th of June next year. And on the same day, there will be a launch face-to-face international conference co-organized by UIC and hosted by the Association of American Railroads, the Federal Railway Administration, and Operation Lifesaver in Denver, Colorado, with a technical visit on the 10th of June in Pueblo. There will be also a trespass and suicide prevention special session before the ILCAD event to take place on the 8th of June 2022. Now, I would like to introduce our trespass and suicide prevention activities. On the left-hand side, this is a movie where a stuntman and French actor was running on the Metro Line 6 in Paris. You see that also in James Bond films. On the right-hand side, you see a real photo taken in the UK with people taking selfies on the tracks. We have launched a very new working group on trespass and suicide prevention activities because it is also our first priority for our members. We decided to create that group, and it is chaired by Alexander Ivanenko from Russian Railways and co-chaired by Dr. Anne Mills from RSSB in the UK. We gather about 40 members from the railway sector and academics from USA, Canada, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. We had a kickoff meeting in June, and we will have a second meeting on the 25th of October. We decided to create such a group for statistical reasons because over 90% of all fatalities on the rail infrastructure are third parties, trespassers, and level crossing users, according to the UIC safety database. For strategic reasons, because there was no global platform to tackle these issues, and it was obvious that UIC, representing the railways on a worldwide level, should take the lead on those issues that impact a lot the railway operation of our members. Recently, we sent a questionnaire to our members to know if they have trespass and suicide prevention programs to make an international benchmark on best practices and solutions. We will present the results in October. The main objectives are to publish UIC guidelines in the near future, to update the ResTrail toolbox. ResTrail is an EU project that UIC coordinated on trespass and suicide prevention. And why not in the future organize an annual and biannual international awareness campaign and conference similar to ILCAD in the future. ILCAD is part of the UIC events for European Year of Rail 2021, also European Road Safety Charter, and also the UN Decade of Action for Road Safety 2021-2030. On behalf of UIC, I would like to invite you to share your experiences on level crossing safety, trespass, and suicide prevention. Please also join our level crossing safety campaign. I thank you very much for your attention. Do not hesitate to ask me questions if needed. Thank you.
Absolutely, Isabel. There's a couple of questions that are already in the chat, but I just want to say those two videos that you shared, they touch the nerve. They lend the message exactly where it's supposed to go, because we now see ourselves in those videos. We see how we need to take responsibility and contribute towards railway safety for ourselves as well as for the system. So I've got 3 questions for you that are on the chat. We'll read out those questions. The first one is, when you presented the stats, there's a question from Kenny that says, do you have any differentiation in terms of who was involved using age, gender, and so forth in the accidents that you presented earlier? The second question from Kenny also is, do you conduct safety risk assessments on the level crossing apart from the questionnaires? Can you just quickly deal with those 2 questions? Then I'm going to read out the next question from SMA.
So the first question, I did not get it quite well.
The first question from Kenny says, You presented earlier statistics around the incidents that happened in the road crossing lines. I think that's where he started asking that question from. And the question says, do you have any differentiation in terms of who was involved using age, gender, and other demographics?
Yeah. Well, it depends on the countries that participate in our safety database. Usually, they have the age, the gender, and also the type of users. It can be pedestrians, it can be light vehicle users, it can be truck drivers, it can be bus drivers, and so on. So, according to the police inquiry, yes, the railways normally know about the age, gender, and so on. And the second question was, do you conduct safety risk assessment? Well, UIC do not carry out some risk assessment. We are an association. We have about 200 members, railway companies, railway infrastructure managers, and usually Europe at least, these are the railway infrastructure managers who carry out the risk assessment. And there is a new law in France, for example, after we had a big accident with a school bus and we had 6 fatalities on the bus, that compels now the road sector and the railway sector to carry out risk assessments together. But it's not compulsory in all countries. But UIC itself do not carry out a risk assessment. And the third question was, influencing and changing human behavior is not easy. Do you measure the extent to which your awareness campaigns are effective? Well, usually on a national level, our members carry out their own national campaigns. They also join the International Awareness Campaign in June, and usually they measure their campaigns on site. So the French railways, for example, the UK railways, they measure their campaigns. On a very international level, it's very different. ILCAD is a kind of club gathering several members in the world, and those people they are on the field, and these are the people who are measuring the impact of their campaign. What we do is usually we organize some meetings of the task force of ILCAD, and they make presentations and they explain how they organize their own campaign, with which measures, which means, because some countries and some companies are small, they don't have too much budget, so they do what they can. And there are bigger countries with bigger campaigns, so they have some measurements, and they share with us the results of their campaign. So I really invite you to take part in the campaign and in our groups, and to share on information on those issues.
Thank you very much, Isabel. Thank you for responding to those questions. Ladies and gentlemen, I can deduce that for us to be able to make headway towards a sustainable railway environment, we need to recognize the role the railway plays in our lives, in the economy, and how we can play a role, a meaningful role as society, to be able to increase safety and maintain sustainability in the sector. We also have heard that there is a lot of responsibility placed on us as the users, as the society, and the different institutions within our communities and our government to play and make a meaningful role, a meaningful contribution to increasing safety and making sure that we protect our infrastructure. The involvement of communities can never be overemphasized. My role here is to say, let's all join forces. Let's use the information we've gathered here and engage further and all be part of a solution. I now invite you to the lounge to take a break, gather into more networking, ask more questions from the speakers as well as other audience members. I now hand over back to Africa, who will be announcing the results of the polls. If you haven't done so, please take the next few seconds to click on the polls tab and quickly vote for your speakers. He will be announcing the results shortly. Over to you, Africa. Thank you very much.
Nagamso, thank you very much. It has really been a scintillating and fascinating series of speakers. Thank you to all, of course, the guest speakers for joining us this morning and afternoon to further illuminate some of the challenges that we are dealing with on a regular basis. As Nagamso indicated, the guests are going to be available at the various lounges. All you have to do is go to a lounge and then obviously indicate which table, and then you'll see who's at the table and you can engage with them a little bit further. I am also, though, frantically trying to find out in the background whether we could do the last session now so that we can free you basically for the rest of the afternoon. The last session, of course, will include me announcing who the winner of the Best Presenter Award is, but also inviting the acting CEO of the regulator to wrap up what has not only been a very interesting day, but rather what has been a very fascinating new way of doing conferencing over the last 3 days. And I think we've got a number of issues to take forward and some action plans taken from this conference, which will certainly help shape what we need to do over the next year ahead of the conference in 2022. So I've got the go ahead that we are going to move the break and the networking session to a little bit later. We're going to conclude the business of the day. That way, when we say goodbye to you, you literally go and network, and then you have a wonderful Friday as well as your weekend as well. The winner of the Best Presenter Prize for today, as determined by you, is Miss Mesela Dlapo. Mesela is the Chief Executive Officer of the African Rail Industry Association, and she was talking to third-party access, being a key driver to sustainable railways. Mesela, congratulations to you. Certainly well-deserved. Obviously, the participants found your contribution very, very engaging. They were intrigued by the information, and as we always say, they want to know a little bit more. Mesela Dlapo, congratulations to you, the Chief Executive Officer of the African Rail Industry Association. You've won yourself the prize of Best Speaker today, and the regulator will send a lovely prize to you in the coming weeks. Well done indeed. Now, rail safety is essential. Any economy that wants to grow in a modern day society needs to have a safe, efficient, clean, and dependable rail network. We've got a network that is challenged in South Africa for a whole host of reasons that we've discussed over the last 3 days. We are in the middle of a crisis. Hopefully, we are tending towards the tail end of it. The sooner we all get vaccinated, I keep on saying this, the sooner we all get out of the lockdown that we continue to be finding ourselves in since March of last year. And in order for us to grow the economy at a rate that is going to be sufficient to tackle the challenges of the socioeconomic lived experience of many South Africans, the rail network is going to be essential, be it to transport people from their home to place of work or school and back, and do so in a way that is dependable and that is safe and that is cheap and efficient, be it transporting of goods and freight from one harbor to not only other parts of South Africa, but other parts of the African continent. We need a very strong, sturdy, invested in rail network. And I think the last 3 days have really given us much food for thought in terms of how we get there. The crisis has given us an opportunity to think out of the box, to pivot. Those are the terms that you're all familiar with. And if we do not come out of this crisis with something exceptional for the rail network, then we would have absolutely wasted a good crisis. I imagine, Muso, that you've been given much, much food for thought by not only discussions today, but certainly discussions for the last 3 days. I'd like to welcome them to the platform for his closing thoughts and official closing of the conference for this year, the acting CEO of the Railway Safety Regulator, Mr. Muso Selaledi. Muso, good afternoon.
Africa, he will be joining in a second.
Okay, he will be joining in
he
a
is on.
second.
He is
I am
coming
told.
live.
Thank you very much, Flo. Just another round of applause, even if it is virtual, please, for all of our panelists and speakers today. The amount of work that has gone into the presentations has been outstanding and incredible. As we've been indicating for the last 2 days as well, we will be providing, of course, a video of all the presentations alongside the slides that were presented by the various speakers for the last 3 days. I know that some of you were making frantic notes, but if you want to, I suppose, accurately reflect what is being said, this will become available to you in the coming days. As always, if there's any particular aspect of the sector that you'd like discussed in future conferences, please let us know. That way we can design a conference that is going to work and address your needs and your issues. Towards the tail end of the panel discussion I moderated today, there were issues around, is the regulation to have fencing around the entire extent and distance of the rail network the most efficient way of using the money that is available and the resources? That's a conversation I think that needs to go ahead. And I imagine that Muso Selaledi is going to be reflecting on that with us as well in a moment. But I, for one, being an outsider in this sector, have been incredibly impressed by the incredible amount of detail and work and research that has gone into each of the presentations. The new technologies that are in the sector, outstanding. We've had speakers not only from South Africa, but also the rest of the African continent, and of course, other parts of the world as well. We thank you for all your incredible work and participation and the inspiration that you're leaving us with, because we know now, at least you have a better idea of what it can be like if we pour in the resources, if we direct all our efforts, energy, and hard work into realizing it, because ultimately it needs to serve the people of South Africa, the people of this continent. So thank you to each and every one of you who has participated over the last 3 days as a panelist, as a presenter. Thank you for your hard work. And as I said, we'll be sharing it, of course, with the participants. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank you at dedicating 3 days of a working week to listening, to reflecting, to engaging in the way that you have. It really has made my job a lot easier and the job of the organizers of the conference, without a doubt. Having an engaged and interested participant, even on a virtual platform, becomes essential in order for us to make sure that, one, the message is landing and that the presentations are of interest to you, but two, you extract from the specialists that we've invited reflections that you are looking for, because we are part of one big network, ultimately, I suppose, a pun intended there, and we need to work together. We might work for different entities, separate entities, we might report to different people, but ultimately we are all working together to provide a railway safe network that is for the benefit of the patrons, of the passengers, of the South Africans, but also our clients, be they local or international. So thank you for dedicating the last 3 days and giving up as much of your time as possible to listen, and as I said, most importantly, to engage in this conference. He is lining up and he'll be on in a minute, and I'm sure he's going to take the opportunity to do his own thanks as well. But to the Railway Safety Regulator, it is hard work that you do. As a regulator, I imagine there are often very tense and difficult conversations that need to take place between you and PRASA, you and Transnet, you and Gauteng, the Gautrain, and so forth and so forth. But those conversations and deliberations and work needs to be done. And the sense I've been getting, at least anyway, from the last 3 days, is that you're wanting to work with the sector. You're not just there as an oversight tool, which is an important legally constituted tool, but you're also very much interested in the success of this sector. So that has been demonstrated certainly to me, and I imagine to every one of the panel of the participants over the last 3 days. With that in note, Musi, I hand over to you now for the final word and a pointing forward of whatever we're going to be doing in October 2022, which hopefully will be in person. Lovely to see you again.
Thank you very much, Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the privilege of doing the closing remarks for this year's conference. From day one, when it all started with the opening address from our Honorable Deputy Minister to all the presentations we had on day one, I had the privilege of sitting through many of them, very informative, very engaging, right to this very moment when I can do the closing remarks. We have come to the end of a very rewarding conference, the regulator's first ever online annual rail safety conference, one of the many innovations born by our new normal, the environment affected by the pandemic. As the sun sets on this year's unique ARSC, we must recognize the zeal and the commitment of you, our conference delegates, who stayed online for the better part of the 3 days to participate and engage on this platform. For that, I absolutely thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to thank our partners for hosting informative exhibitions and our speakers for their thought-provoking inputs, which invigorated networking opportunities and will hopefully stimulate more conversations far beyond this conference. I hope that the engagements over the last few days will allow for collaboration within the sector and for the advancement in support of the sector as a whole. What has become very clear to us over the last couple of days and the duration of this conference is that the rail sector is in dire need of fresh solutions for the mammoth challenges such as the migration of commuters from rail to road and the eradication of our rail infrastructure through vandalism and theft, just to name a few obstacles. However, on the upside, through the convergence of great minds, we can develop key strategies to unlock many of these challenges. The debates have been very interesting. They have been thought-provoking. The session I had a privilege to be part of, there were comments given by our operators around the rail reserve regulations, how we need to go and consider their inputs as we chart a way forward to that. There have been numerous presentations from the human factor delegates. There were international speakers who joined us, and the virtual platform has given us and opened up a plethora of international speakers, more than usually we would have experienced, and we thank everyone, all the delegates, all the speakers, all the participants. Thank you all for being part of the success of this year's annual Rail Safety Conference. Thank you for helping us to uphold the mandate of keeping rail safety on the right track. We will see you again next year for next year's version of the annual conference, which will be on 3 October 2022. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and goodbye from me.
Thank you very much to you and your team. It really has been an amazing, amazing conference. As Musa indicated there, we will see each other again in October of 2022. Have a wonderful Friday and have an even better weekend. Remember to make your way now to the lounge and engage. Many of the speakers are still available to answer some of the questions that we were not able to get to. And of course, thank you to the session chairs as well, who were amazing in doing the work that they did. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful Friday.
Operators to do business. At the Railway Safety Regulator, we're mandated to oversee railway safety, and our work begins before the first train leaves the station. All operators must apply for a safety permit. Provides a vital platform for approximately 160 operators to do business. At the Railway Safety Regulator, we're mandated to oversee railway safety, and our work begins before the first train leaves the station. All operators must apply for a safety permit to meet operational requirements. We ensure the safety of passengers, communities, and all stakeholders through improved standards of the rail network to prevent safety incidents. We monitor, investigate, and enforce compliance to regulations for a network that serves industrial purposes, the movement of freight, tourism, and public transport. Our approach is based on enforcement, engineering, and education. Enforcement is important. It entails close cooperation with operators like PRASA, Gautrain, and Transnet. We conduct all technical inspections. Enforcement ensures all measures are taken so that operating permits remain valid. It's vital in preventing what nobody wants to see, accidents. Through the ongoing development of enforcement tools, we guarantee the safety of commuters and the public and ensure that necessary innovations and improvements to infrastructure do not compromise safety. Every enforcement, engineering, and educational measure is detailed in the annual State of Safety report. Engineering safety is vital to the likes of Gibela, Traction, and Lukini, key stakeholders at the heart of the rail industry. To transport people and goods safely every day, high-quality components, faultless signaling, impeccable networks, and a safe operation environment are imperative. At their manufacturing plants, our inspectors ensure their designs meet the correct specs for the rail network. We conduct technical audits that include every aspect of safety, from high-tech control centers to remote stretches of track. Human factors often come into play as far as accidents are concerned. That's why modern railway systems are designed to maximize efficiency and reduce the potential for accidents. That's how we ensure that engineering and new technology conforms to South African safety standards. Education plays a vital role across our entire national footprint. It's our job to entrench safe railway behavior among commuters, operators, and communities living adjacent to railway lines. Our awareness campaigns reach all stakeholders, including commuters, operators, government departments, commuter forums, and community leaders. South Africa is an exciting kaleidoscope of cultures, business, sights, sounds, and stories. The delivery of vehicles for international export, family holidays from Johannesburg to Cape Town, and getting to work safely. At the Railway Safety Regulator, we work 24/7 to develop and enforce regulations. We are responsible for safety and reliability, and above all, we deliver, whatever it takes.
SAPEX is the body professionalizing supply chain management in Africa since 1966. 53 years of commitment to supply chain excellence in Africa, whilst growing, empowering, and sustaining a vital community of educated supply chain professionals. Supply chains are at the heart of every organization, and supply chain competence is the catalyst for economic growth and transformation. As supply chains become more complex, skilled and ethically accountable management is essential. But where are those professionally designated and ethically accountable supply chain professionals? You are these supply chain professionals. These are our supply chain focused organizations, and SAPEX aims to elevate your role as a supply chain professional within them. Join us on our journey to elevate supply chain management as a profession in Africa. Think supply chain. Think SAPEX.
Welcome to Lukini, South Africa. We are the preferred manufacturer of high-quality forged railway wheels for locomotives, wagons, and passenger coaches on the African continent. Our products include monoblock wheels, tires, axles, and wheel sets to specification. Our facility in Germiston, South Africa is ISO 9001-2015 and IRIS certified. We are approved to supply products to AAR and OEM standards.
Smart Ergonomics is a consultancy that specializes in ergonomic services for a range of industries, including transport, mining, manufacturing, and healthcare. We offer a comprehensive suite of solutions that are tailor-made to the needs of our clients. Our services enable organizations to meet their legal requirements, achieve their occupational health goals, and improve productivity and safety in the workplace. Smart Ergonomic Services. Through consulting, training, research, and development, We develop tailored, smart, and high impact solutions. Our services take a systems approach and are applied across the three domains of human interaction: cognitive, physical, and organizational ergonomics. Our consulting services integrate ergonomics into organizations using established methods, approaches, or interventions, including ergonomics risk management, human system interaction assessments, accident investigations, fatigue risk management solutions, training and awareness. For more information or to speak to one of our consultants, please contact us on the details displayed.